Hello, my name is Neelam Patel, and I am the OVW team lead for training and technical assistance. This pre-application recorded webinar is for the fiscal year 2022 Training and Technical Assistance Initiative solicitation. It is not the intent, nor is there sufficient time to go over every aspect of the solicitation. Therefore, this webinar will go over specific sections of the solicitation. All applicants are responsible for reviewing the solicitation in its entirety and following the instructions for all due dates for the submission of their applications. It will be useful for you to have a copy of the solicitation either printed or downloaded as you view this webinar, as I will be referring to specific sections of the solicitation and page numbers. Please note that during the course of the application process, OVW staff cannot provide any feedback pertaining to the quality of your application or provide feedback on proposed project deliverables. OVW staff is available throughout the open period to address questions about the solicitation's application requirements. Please feel free to send all questions to ovw.techassistance@usdoj.gov. The first item I will go over are the due dates. Application submissions in response to the solicitation will be done through a two-step process. Applicants will submit the SF424 and SFLLL in grants.gov and submit a full application in the new Just Grants system, referred to as Just Grants. Applicants must submit the SF424 and the SFLLL in grants.gov no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, April 26, 2022. Submit the SF424 and the SFLLL as early as possible, but not later than 24 to 48 hours before the grants.gov deadline. The full application package is due in Just Grants by 9:00 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, April 28, 2022. Applicants cannot submit their full applications in Just Grants until the grants.gov submission is complete. So please do not wait until the last few days to submit your SF424 and the SFLLL in grants.gov. Likewise, please do not wait until the last day or two to submit your application in Just Grants. Also, please note that you will not be able to add any documents to your application after you press submit in Just Grants. So if you discover you forgot to upload a required document, you will need to complete the grants.gov submission again and resubmit your full application again in Just Grants. However, you will only be able to submit your full application again in Just Grants if the grants.gov deadline has not passed. Please make sure you do not finalize your submission Just Grants until you are positive all the correct and required documents are uploaded. And if you are an organization that anticipates submitting applications for multiple purpose areas, it is your organization's responsibility that you attach the correct documents to the correct application in grants.gov and Just Grants for each application. OVW will not and cannot move attached items from one application to another. There are additional dates that are important to note for the submission of your applications. To submit an application, all applicants must obtain a Data Universal Number System number, also called DUNS number, by April 7, 2022. And they must also register online with the System for Award Management, also called SAM, and register with grants.gov by April 7, 2022. Please note, until April 3rd, 2022, entities that are not registered in SAM.gov in which to submit application will need to obtain a DUNS to register with SAM. On and after April 4, 2022, entities can register directly in SAM.gov without a DUNS and will be assigned a unique entity ID upon registration. If your organization is already registered with SAM and with grants.gov, please double check your registration and make sure it is up to date. lack of registration or not renewing registration on SAM or grants.gov was the reason some past applicants were unable to submit their applications before the deadline. Failure to register in a timely manner or verify that your organization's registrations are active well before the submission of the application are not situations of experiencing unforeseeable technical issues to request a late submission. Next, I will move on to the letter of intent. Information on the letter of intent is located on page 15 of the solicitation. Although not required, it is encouraged that applicants submit a letter of intent to OVW Tech Assistance at usdoj.gov by April 7, 2022. This will ensure that applicants are well positioned to successfully submit their applications by the deadline. Letters should state that the organization is registered and current with their SAM and grants.gov registration. In addition to the information requested in letter of intent template linked in the solicitation, please note that applicants applying to the TA solicitation should also list the purpose areas their organization anticipates submitting applications. Include the number of the purpose area and the purpose area title. Including the purpose area number and title in your letter of intent will assist OVW in estimating how many applications to expect in response to the TA solicitation. If your organization anticipates on submitting applications for multiple purpose areas, you only need one letter of intent that lists all the purpose areas for which your organization anticipates submitting applications. The letter of intent will not obligate potential applicants to submit an application. Applicants that do not submit a letter of intent are still eligible to apply. This slide provides general information and resources for submitting your application and for both grants.gov and Just Grants process. Minimally, you should watch the application submission training video and download the application submission job aid from the Just Grants website to familiarize yourself with the new application process. Please plan your submission accordingly so you do not miss the due dates and time. The next few slides are for potential applicants that are not familiar with the OVW Training Technical Assistance Initiative, which I will refer to as the TA initiative. The primary purpose of the OVW TA initiative is to provide direct training and technical assistance to existing and potential grantees and sub-grantees to enhance and support their efforts to implement projects supported by the OVW grant funds. OVW's TA initiative is designed to build the national capacity of justice system professionals and victim service organizations to respond effectively and efficiently to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. OVW TA initiative actively supports the fostering of partnerships among organizations that have traditionally or not traditionally worked together to address violence against women. Specifically, the inclusion of organizations serving and representing marginalized, culturally specific, and underserved communities. OVW TA initiative projects must be national in scope unless otherwise stated in the purpose area. This means that projects proposing to serve specific grant programs and professions must be for all those grantees and professions nationwide. Please note, as I stated earlier, proposed activities must serve one or more of the OVW grant programs and eligible entities and individuals to receive OVW grant funds. Please visit the OVW website to learn more about the OVW grant programs. OVW TA initiative is not intended for applicants seeking funding to attend a training or host training and technical assistance events for their organization and community. For example, if you're looking specifically for funding to bring a training or a TA provider to your organization and for your organization to hire staff to train your organization and partners, this is not allowable under this solicitation. Page 14 to 15 lists the eligible applicants for this program. This is also listed on the cover of the solicitation. Eligible applicants are national, tribal, statewide, or other nonprofit organizations. In rare circumstances, OVW may support institutions of higher education, state, local, or tribal governments, or governmental agencies such as police departments, prosecutors' offices, or probation departments, or local nonprofit organizations. However, all applicants must have the capacity and demonstrated history of providing training and technical assistance at the national level. We are now going to move to the purpose areas covered on pages 4 through 13. OVW has 3 distinct categories of training and technical assistance: targeted, competitive comprehensive, and non-competitive comprehensive. OVW will support only the targeted and comprehensive purpose areas identified in the solicitation. Applicants requesting to develop targeted or comprehensive projects for purpose areas not listed in the solicitation will be removed from consideration. Applications that modify or expand an OVW purpose area, including combining 2 or more purpose areas, will also be removed from consideration. To avoid confusion, OVW requests that applicants applying for a targeted purpose area to refrain from using the word comprehensive in their project titles. Most of the purpose areas for fiscal year 2022 are targeted purpose areas. And as explained in the solicitation, targeted purpose areas are intended to provide in-depth TA and training on a narrow topic within 1 or more of the crime areas. As stated in the solicitation, OVW may make multiple awards for a targeted purpose area, or may determine not to make an award for a targeted purpose area if there are no applications that effectively address the purpose area, or if there are not sufficient funds to fully support the purpose area. Comprehensive purpose areas are projects that promote the consistent delivery of technical assistance and training for certain grant programs, professions, and core critical areas. Comprehensive purpose areas are competed every 5 years. Applications proposing a competitive comprehensive area not listed in the solicitation will be removed from consideration. OVW will make only 1 award for each competitive comprehensive purpose area. Or OVW may determine not to make an award for a purpose area if there are no applications that effectively address the purpose area, or if there are not sufficient funds to fully support the purpose area. Current recipients of a comprehensive TA award eligible for non-competitive comprehensive funding in fiscal year 2022 to continue one of the non-competitive comprehensive projects listed in the solicitation on page 14 will be contacted directly by OVW. Applications for a non-competitive comprehensive purpose area that are not from the current OVW TA provider already funded for these non-competitive comprehensive purpose areas that are listed in a solicitation will be removed from consideration. Applicants must respond to the purpose area description content for which they are applying for, as stated for each purpose area. It is the responsibility of the applicant to list the purpose area for which they are applying in the abstract and in the project narrative. Please note, there is not a limit to how many purpose areas an organization can apply for. However, applicants must submit separate and distinct applications for each purpose area for which they would like to submit an application, and clearly distinguish which purpose area they are applying for. OVW will not match submitted applications to the purpose area. If your organization is applying for multiple purpose areas and you mistakenly upload the wrong documents to the application, OVW will not match the right document to the right application. The project period and amount of funds for each purpose area is listed in the solicitation. And we request you do not exceed this amount or the project period. Finally, OVW cannot provide input regarding what you would like to propose for a purpose area. Page 13 states the OVW priority areas for fiscal year 2022. There are 5 priority areas for fiscal year 2022. Many of the fiscal year 2022 TA initiative purpose areas address one or more of the priority areas. Applicants are encouraged to incorporate one or more of these priorities into their proposed project. Out-of-scope activities are listed on page 14. Please review this carefully. As explained earlier in the presentation, an application that does not sufficiently address one of the enumerated purpose areas in the solicitation will be deemed as out of scope. Additionally, research projects and direct victim services is out of scope for the TA initiative. Also, any application that focuses on providing training and technical assistance to a single organization, state, region, or geographic community, unless specified in the purpose area, is considered out of scope. Page 15 lists limited use of funds and activities requiring prior approval. Grantees for this program can use up to 2% of their award funds for assessing their work for internal improvement only, such as convening listening sessions to identify training and TA gaps, or surveys and evaluations about the quality of a training or TA. Recipients of TA initiative funding must receive prior approval to use grant funds to support surveys, whether it is to conduct an assessment of the project or for any other purposes. Page 14 explains the availability of funds and that funding is not guaranteed in the future, including for both new and continuation of purpose areas. And all awards are subject to the availability of appropriated funds. I will now move on to award periods and amounts, which is listed for each competitive purpose area on pages 4 to 12. I have already stated applicants should not exceed the amount stated for the purpose area or exceed the stated project period. Applicants should also be realistic of how much funding will be needed to accomplish their proposed project for the purpose area. So for example, if the applicant determines that a project will need $400,000 to accomplish the project under the purpose area, and the cap of the purpose area is $500,000, then the applicant should really apply for the amount they need and not increase the amount to meet the $500,000 cap, even if they don't need that full amount. Non-competitive comprehensive applicants will be contacted directly by their program specialist to determine the amount of their application. All fiscal year 2022 TA initiative awards will be made as cooperative agreements, which will require an active participation with OVW in the development and implementation of the project. I'll now move on to types of applicants, which is explained on page 14. Continuation applicants have an existing or recently expired after March 3rd, 2022 award under the TA initiative for a purpose area that is included in the fiscal year 2022 TA initiative solicitation, for which they will be submitting a targeted competitive or non-competitive comprehensive application. Continuation funding is not guaranteed. New applicants are either 1, applicants that have never received funding under the TA initiative, 2, current and former recipients of a TA initiative award that propose to address a purpose area that is included in the fiscal year 2022 TA initiative solicitation for which they have not previously received funding, or 3, former award recipients for the purpose area whose previous funding for that purpose area expired on or before March 3rd, 2022. I also want to mention that all current TA grantees with a substantial amount of funding remaining in a project for a purpose area they are seeking continuation funding and has enough funding remaining as of March 31st, 2022, without adequate justification may not be considered for funding or may receive a reduced award if selected for funding for that purpose area. Page 14 lists the mandatory program requirements for the TA initiative. The first one is to make sure your application's budget includes the amount required for attending OVW sponsored trainings. This is a minimum of $7,500 for projects that are for 24 to 36 months and $2,500 for projects that are for 12 months. This amount is to allow proposed project staff to attend OVW trainings for skill building and development. See the budget section for more information on the scoring criteria for this requirement. Second, all applicants must include a planning period for their proposed project. Please see the scoring criteria in the What Will Be Done section on how to address the project period and timeline in your application. The proposed period of time for the planning of the project is the applicant's discretion, and it will be reviewed accordingly based on the activities the applicant is proposing for the project. Third, funded projects may be asked to participate in an OVW sponsored assessment or program evaluation if applicable. As a reminder, applicants are limited to one application per purpose area. If an applicant submits multiple applications for the same purpose area, OVW will review the most recent system validated version submitted before the deadline. Applicants submitting applications for multiple purpose areas must apply separately for each purpose area and have different and distinct project titles. Moving on to the application requirements that starts on page 15. A complete application includes the project narrative, budget detail worksheet and narrative, the memorandum of understanding, MOU for short, and one letter of support. Applications that do not include all of the following documents will be deemed as incomplete and not considered for funding. Also, please follow the formatting and technical requirements as stated in the solicitation. Points may be deducted for applications that do not adhere to the formatting requirements. The formatting and technical requirements are listed on page 15. For the application for federal assistance, known as SF424, please review page 15 on how to complete the SF424. Please note that the SF424 is generated when you begin the application process in grants.gov and must be submitted in grants.gov. The amount requested in the SF424 must match the budget submitted in Just Grants. Please note that match funds are not required for this solicitation. Additionally, on page 16 is information on submitting the disclosure of lobbying activities, the SFLLL, in grants.gov. Also on page 16 is information on the standard applicant information, Just Grants 424, and general agency information. Applicants must complete this web-based form in Just Grants, which is pre-populated with the SF424 data that was submitted in grants.gov. I am now going to move on to the abstract. Applicants are required to submit a brief abstract of the project in the Just Grants text box. The abstract is not scored, but is used throughout the review process. Please review the abstract section very carefully on page 16. Please only submit the abstract in the text box. Do not attach a separate abstract in Just Grants. Applicants are highly encouraged to follow the template on page 16 on how to write the abstract in the text box in Just Grants. Please do not summarize past accomplishments in the abstract. Also, please make sure that you include the purpose area for which you're applying for in the abstract. So now I will move on to the project narrative section of the solicitation. The project narrative is worth 65 points and consists of 3 sections. 1, the purpose of the proposal, which is worth 20 points. 2, what will be done, which is worth 30 points. And 3, who will implement, which is worth 15 points. Please note that applicants applying for a target purpose area are limited to 20 pages double-spaced for the project narrative, and competitive comprehensives are limited to 25 pages double-spaced. For each section of the project narrative, applicants must respond to the criteria for each section, and responses must be in that specific section. Projects should be responsive to the purpose area description and the specific target audience or audiences and/or grant program or grant programs identified in the purpose area, if applicable. Please do not include attachments that are not required for the application, and do not include photos and images in your project narrative. Also, please follow the font and spacing requirements if you are using a chart within your project narrative. This information is stated in the formatting and technical requirements, which states that the charts may be single-spaced, but you must follow the font requirements. For the what will be done section, you must provide a clear link between the proposed activities and the need that you identified in the purpose of the proposal section. One question that we receive frequently is what types of delivery methods should an applicant propose in their project? The delivery methods applicants choose for the proposed project should be the ones that are best suited for the goals and objectives stated in the application. As stated in the criteria in the what will be done section, applicants must explain why a particular delivery method is appropriate for the target audience and profession and for that proposed purpose area, as well as what is the applicant's proposed partners. As stated in the criteria in the what will be done section, applicants must explain why a particular delivery method is appropriate for a target audience or profession and for that purpose area, proposed purpose area, as well as what is the applicant's and project partner's experience with that proposed delivery method. I also want to draw your attention to the criteria in the what will be done section regarding accessibility. All TA training must be responsive to individuals with disabilities, individuals that are hard of hearing or deaf, or are limited English proficient. Finally, as stated previously in the presentation, a planning period is required in the project narrative. The timeline, which must be included in the what will be done section, must be included in the body of the project narrative and must not be attached as a separate attachment. If you attach the timeline as a separate document, it will count toward the page limit of the project narrative. And if the project narrative is already at the maximum page limit, the timeline will not be reviewed if it is a separate document. Moving on to the budget, worth 15 points. As stated previously, each purpose area has a budget cap and project period. All budgets must be submitted directly into Just Grants in the web-based budget worksheet and narrative. Please make sure you've carefully considered the resources needed to successfully implement the proposed project. As I explained earlier in the webinar, please determine how much funding you will need to successfully implement the proposed project. And if you don't need the full cap, then don't apply for the full cap. As a reminder, OVW has the discretion to make awards for greater or lesser amounts than requested and to negotiate the scope of the work and budget prior to the award. Keep in mind that the costs in the budget should correlate with what the applicant is proposing in the project narrative. And there must be a clear link in the budget and project narrative. For example, if your budget includes expenses for in-person training, then the in-person training should be listed in the project narrative. Also for staffing, if you listed a position in the budget, you should be discussing that position in the project narrative, and that the first that position or individual is mentioned should not be in the budget. As I mentioned earlier in the webinar, there is a requirement for OVW training for TA providers. So keep that in mind, that all applicants need to include those funds to attend OVW sponsored events and trainings. That funding is also to attend any required OVW meetings that a grantee is required to attend as a TA provider. This funding allocation is required for all applicants, even if you are located in the District of Columbia or in the greater DC, Northern Virginia, Maryland area. Additionally, please be mindful that all applicants must make their training and TA accessible, which may include translation of materials, the use of interpreters, captioning, etc. You must include those expenses in your budget and should be reasonable to what is being proposed in your application. Finally, please refer to the conference planning and expenditure limits in the solicitation if you're proposing in-person meetings and trainings. And please review this section carefully if you are allocating costs to these activities. Applicants must complete and submit the web-based form in Just Grants for the budget worksheet and budget narrative. The web-based budget is required, and it is the budget that will be reviewed, even if you attach a budget with your application. In the next couple slides, we are going to focus on aspects of your application related to documents that our financial team, the Grants Financial Management Division, otherwise known as GFMD, reviews. More specifically, we'll discuss some items that GFMD has identified from prior years' applications that could help with expediting our review process. So for today, we're going to highlight certain aspects of the pre-award risk assessment and provide you with a link to a detailed webinar on how to develop the budget that will be included in your application. First, we'll highlight the items identified in the data requested with application, which is completed by all applicants in a survey in Just Grants. A list of questions included in the survey appears at the end of the solicitation under the heading Survey Questions. Applicants should link on the survey name, the pre-award risk assessment, to access and complete the survey in Just Grants. Specifically, two items that we would like to discuss are the single audit response and the IRS three-step safe harbor procedure. OVW requests that all applicants provide a statement as to whether they have expended $750,000 or more in federal funds during their last fiscal year. If they have, then they indicate that and also specify the end date of the last fiscal year. However, GFMD is finding that applicants do not always include all of this information. Please ensure that this question is answered in its entirety on the data requested with application survey, which is question number 3. Another item that we'd like to highlight from the solicitation is specifically for nonprofit organizations. If you use the IRS three-step safe harbor procedure to determine your executive's compensation, you are required to provide a disclosure letter. Page 18 of the solicitation provides further details and a link to the sample letter. Note that there are 4 required parts to this disclosure letter. The sample letter provided outlines all 4 parts of the disclosure. So please make sure to follow the sample and provide a response to each of the 4 pieces. The next item that we'd like to discuss is the pre-award risk assessment survey, which assists GFMD during the pre-award risk assessment review for all applications. Each applicant must prepare a response to all 11 questions, and each question has multiple parts. We noticed that from prior years that applicants do not always fully answer all parts of the questions, which in turn requires GFMD to reach out to the applicant and which may delay funding decisions. Some of the most common issues that we encountered have been, for example, question number 2, where the applicant indicates that they do indeed have internal policies, but they don't provide a brief list of topics covered in the policies and procedures. On question number 3, some applicants fail to provide a brief summary of the organization's process for tracking expenditures, and more specifically, whether or not it tracks budgeted versus actual expenditures. These are just a few examples, but in general, please make sure that you read each piece of each question and provide a full and comprehensive response. This next slide will quickly highlight some resources that are available as you create the budget to be submitted with your application. Over the last couple years, GFMD has developed a detailed webinar presentation on how to develop a budget to be submitted by OVW applications. This presentation addresses some of the challenges that you may face with your budgets and provides some insight on OVW's budget review process. This webinar can be found at the link on this slide. Additionally, Just Grants page has resources on completing the web-based budget in Just Grants. Next up is the uniform guidance, which can be found at 2 CFR 200. Use your favorite search engine for this one. Other resources include the DOJ Financial Guide and the TA solicitation itself. We know this can be a lot of information to process, so if you have any questions about the GFMD information we just discussed, please feel free to contact the GFMD Help Desk at 888-514-8556 or by email ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov. Moving on to the other documents to be submitted with your application, please review pages 19 to 20. This includes the non-supplanting letter and the indirect cost rate agreement, if applicable. Also, applicants must disclose all current and recent OVW awards as stated on page 20, which includes any current grant or cooperative agreement under any OVW grant program or an award that has been closed within the last 12 months from the date of the solicitation closes. Applicants must provide this information in a table using the sample form found on the OVW website. The link is provided in the solicitation. Applicants must also provide the same information regarding any current OVW awards, as well as any pending applications on which the applicant is a subrecipient. Additionally, applicants also must disclose all other federal grant programs from which the applicant currently receives funding or for which it has applied for funding in 2022 to do similar work. Applicants must provide this information in a table using the sample format found on the OVW website. Again, the link is provided in the solicitation. Both tables, if applicable, should be uploaded as attachments in Just Grants. Moving on to the Memorandum of Understanding. Again, it's MOU for short, which is explained on page 19 of the solicitation. The MOU is worth 15 points and is not part of the page limit of the project narrative. Please read this section very carefully and begin working on this section as soon as possible. OVW requires all potential technical system providers to enter into a collaborative relationship with organizations or key consultants who will bring the necessary substantial expertise to the project. The MOU should connect to the project narrative activities and the budget. Applicants should start developing their MOU as soon as possible because of all the signatures that may be involved. OVW requires all applicants to enter into an MOU with key project partners that may include any organization or individuals that have a significant role in the development and or implementation of the project, regardless of receiving financial compensation for their partnership. Any partner that receives funding is considered a key partner. Letters of support or letters of commitment from a partner or potential partner in lieu of signing an MOU will not be considered in place of an MOU. MOU should be signed and dated during the course of the development of the application, and it should be signed by the authorized representative of each proposed project partner, agency, or the individual contractor or consultant. A question we received in the past is, does an organization need to get a signature from an outside accountant that they will be paying for under consultants category that works on their organization's books? That answer is no. Accountants are not an MOU partner. Also, applicants must only submit one MOU with all partners' signatures. Please do not submit multiple MOUs for each partner. All partners must sign this one MOU. However, applicants may submit multiple signature pages. So for example, if you have 8 partners, it might be difficult to get all 8 signatures on one page. So you may want to have one signature per page, but please make sure that all the names are listed on each page so everyone knows who is signing the MOU. Electronic signatures will be accepted, but please make sure all electronic signatures are legible, especially if scanning or printing the signature pages. There is no page limit for the MOU, but we do recommend that you do not go excessive with the MOU pages and do not include information not requested in the solicitation. For example, in the past, we have seen MOUs with excessive lengths of 15 to 30 pages, which did not even include the signature pages, and the applicant still didn't respond to the criteria in the solicitation for MOUs. So please remember, respond to the criteria requested. The letter of support is worth 5 points. Only one letter of support is required, and if you submit multiple letters, only one of the letters will be reviewed and scored, and will be up to the discretion of OVW's peer reviewers and OVW staff to determine which letter will be reviewed and scored. The letter of support must be from previous recipient of the applicant's training or technical assistance. For an applicant that has never had an OVW TA award before, those applicants should include a letter of support from a recipient of any training in TA that they have provided in the past. Please make sure to provide the scoring criteria stated in the solicitation for the letter of support section to whomever you're going to have write your letter of support. That individual or organization providing the letter of support must write the letter, not the applicant. Please note that applicants will not receive additional points for additional letters. I will now move on to late submission requests, which is explained on page 21. As stated before, you want to make sure you register well in advance and also upload your application as soon as possible, and not so close to the due date and due time, because you want to anticipate any technology issues with uploading your application. There are limited circumstances for requesting a late submission. Please read this section to fully understand the circumstances and steps for requesting a late submission. Any applicant requesting a late submission must follow the instructions listed in the solicitation, which includes requests due to severe weather or natural disaster and technical difficulties beyond the applicant's reasonable control. Missing the grants.gov deadline is not a technical issue for late submission. If you have technical issues submitting the application online, you may request to submit a hard copy. All requests for hard copy submission must be sent to OVW via email no later than April 25th, 2022. Again, please note, failure to begin the registration and application submission in sufficient time or having the correct version of Adobe Acrobat is not an acceptable reason for a late submission. We have seen this many times where applicants in the past were not able to submit their application by the due date because they did not have the correct version of Adobe on their computer they were going to use to upload the application. As a reminder, to make sure you complete the steps required in grants.gov and that your application is successfully submitted in Just Grants, it is recommended that applicants begin the submission process at least 48 hours prior to the deadline, not later than 24 hours from the due date. Again, as I explained earlier, you do not know what technical issues that might occur with uploading your application, and it also gives you enough time to address any errors in uploading your application. Also, as I explained previously, if your organization is submitting applications for multiple purpose areas, please make sure the correct attachments are uploaded with each application. Make sure you are uploading the correct documents to the correct application by labeling them correctly for each application and for each of the documents you are uploading. In the past, we have seen applicants submit multiple applications for different purpose areas, and then they've uploaded the wrong attachments to each of the applications. For example, they've uploaded the wrong MOU to the wrong applications. As I stated previously, OVW will not and cannot move incorrect documents to the correct application. So again, this is a reason why to make sure you upload well in advance so that you can catch those errors prior to the close of the solicitation. Also, do not combine applications when uploading in Just Grants. As a reminder, organizations can submit applications to multiple purpose areas. However, they must submit a separate application for each purpose area for which they are applying to, and only one application per purpose area. Also, please do not submit a test application to see if grants.gov and Just Grants actually works. All applications submitted, even if incomplete, will be considered an application submission and will be reviewed accordingly. Finally, please avoid submitting an application multiple times. The most recently submitted application for that purpose area you are applying for will be the one that we review. When submitting your application Just Grants, you will either be entering specific components directly into Just Grants, such as the budget and the abstract, or you will be required to upload attached documents. As stated previously, all applicants must submit their budget in the web form directly in Just Grants. Because of the new two-step process using both grants.gov and Just Grants, it is important that all applicants complete the grants.gov portion as soon as possible so that you have enough time to submit each component of the application in Just Grants. When submitting your application in Just Grants, applicants may save their progress in the system and revise their application as needed prior to hitting the submit button at the end of the application in Just Grants. Do not hit submit button until you are done with your application and you're ready to submit the full application. The application submitter, entity administrator, and authorized representatives will receive an email from Just Grants confirming submission of the application. Please make sure that these individuals are continuously checking their email for confirmation of submission. OVW will not provide confirmation of applications that were received. As a reminder, please read the solicitation thoroughly. This webinar was an overview of the solicitation, and we recommend that you clearly and carefully read the solicitation. Please also respond to the purpose area description for which you are applying for and address the scoring criteria for each section. Do not combine purpose areas and do not create your own purpose area. Double check all your attachments before uploading and label them accordingly. Do not submit multiple versions of the same application and start your application at least 48 hours from the due date and time. Again, as a reminder, there are multiple due dates that you must keep in mind during the course of the application development and submission. The letter of intent is due no later than April 7, 2022. The Sam Dunn's grants.gov registration should be completed no later than April 7, 2022. If possible, try to register with Sam Dunn and grants.gov by March 31st, 2022. Grants.gov deadline is no later than 11:59 p.m. on April 26, 2022. Please start the grants.gov submission as soon as possible. And finally, Just Grants deadline is 9 p.m. on April 28th, 2022. Applicants can begin the submission of their application in Just Grants once their submission in grants.gov is completed. So it's very important to complete the grants.gov submission as soon as possible to give your organization enough time to submit in Just Grants. With Just Grants being a new system to submit applications, please allow yourself ample amount of time to submit the application in case you encounter any technical issues. Finally, please contact OVW Just Grants Help Desk, grants.gov, the OVW Grant Financial Management Division, and the OVW Training and Technical Assistance Initiative if you have specific questions or issues pertaining to the solicitation and the submission of your application. For programmatic, please email ovw.techassistance@usdoj.gov or call our main line at 307-6026. For grants.gov issues, contact support@grants.gov. And their phone number is 1-800-518-4726. For the OVW Just Grants, contact ovw.justgrantsupport@usdoj.gov or call 1-866-655-4482. And for the Grant Financial Management Division, contact ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov or call 1-888-514-8556. Thank you very much for listening to this recording of the fiscal year 2022 Training and Technical Assistance Initiative Solicitation.